Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Venture and watched the stars shift back to normal view as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Earth hung before them like a blue marble in the darkness, just as beautiful as he remembered from his childhood. 5 years had passed since humanity first cracked the secret of traveling faster than light, and Jake had spent most of that time exploring the nearby star systems. They had found 3 worlds suitable for colonies and established small settlements on each one. Life was good for humanity as they took their first careful steps into the galaxy. "Captain, we have incoming signals from Earth Defense Command," said Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner from the communications station. His voice carried a note of concern that made Jake turn around immediately. "Put it through, Alex." General Henry Davis appeared on the main screen, his weathered face showing more worry than Jake had ever seen before. Behind the general, Jake could see the bustling activity of Earth's military command center. People were moving quickly between stations, and red alert lights flashed in the background. "Jake, we need you and every other ship to return to Earth immediately," General Davis said without any greeting. "We have visitors." "Visitors? What kind of visitors?" "The kind with 200 warships." Jake felt his stomach drop. Humanity had been alone in their corner of the galaxy for 5 years. They had found evidence of other civilizations on distant worlds, but no one had ever come to visit Earth before. 200 warships did not sound like a friendly visit. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "They arrived 6 hours ago and are holding position at the edge of our solar system. They sent a message demanding to speak with our leaders. Dr. Lisa Parker is handling the first contact protocols." Jake knew Dr. Parker well. She was Earth's best expert on alien life and had spent years preparing for this moment. If anyone could handle first contact with an alien species, it would be her. "We're on our way, General. The Venture will be home in 18 hours. "Good, we need every ship and every experienced crew member we can get." The screen went dark, and Jake turned to his crew. They were all looking at him with the same mixture of excitement and fear that he felt in his own chest. Humanity's first contact with aliens was happening, and it was not going the way anyone had hoped. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed," Jake ordered, "and send word to the colonies. Tell them to prepare for the worst." As the Venture jumped back into faster-than-light travel, Jake wondered what these aliens wanted from humanity. Earth was still a young civilization by galactic standards. They had barely begun to explore space and had no great treasures or advanced technology that would interest a powerful alien empire. What could possibly make them worth the attention of 200 warships? On Earth, Dr. Lisa Parker sat in the communication center trying to make sense of the alien message they had received. The aliens called themselves the Drakmor Imperium, and their language was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Her computers were working overtime to establish a basic translation protocol, but progress was slow. What troubled her most was the tone of the message. Even through the translation difficulties, the Drakmor demands came across as arrogant and dismissive. They spoke as if they expected immediate surrender from humanity, as if they had done this same thing many times before with other species. General Davis entered the communication center and walked over to her station. "Any progress with the translation?" "Some," Lisa replied, not taking her eyes off her screens. "I think I understand the basic structure of their language now. They're demanding our immediate surrender and seem surprised that we haven't already given up." "Surprised?" "Yes, from what I can gather, they expected us to surrender as soon as their fleet arrived. The fact that we're still talking seems to confuse them." In the background, Amy Chun worked at her engineering station. At 19 years old, she was the youngest person ever to serve on Earth's defense team, but her brilliant mind for technology had earned her a place among the planet's top engineers. She listened to the conversation between Dr. Parker and General Davis while her fingers flew across her keyboard, analyzing the alien ship designs from the long-range scans. "Their ships are definitely more advanced than ours," Amy reported. "But not by as much as I expected. Maybe a few hundred years ahead of our technology." "A few hundred years is still a significant advantage," General Davis pointed out. True, but it's not impossible to overcome. If we can figure out their weak points, we might have a chance. Dr. Parker finally looked up from her translation work. I think I have enough of their language figured out to send a proper response. What should I tell them? General Davis thought for a moment. Earth's military was strong, but not strong enough to fight 200 advanced warships. They needed time to prepare, time to call back their scattered ships, and time to figure out what these aliens really wanted. Tell them we need time to prepare our children for evacuation to the colonies. Request 30 days to organize the transfer. Lisa nodded and began composing the message. She thought it was a reasonable request that would buy them the time they needed to mount a defense. What she did not know was that the word children would not translate properly into the Drakmor language, and that her innocent request would plant the seeds of a misunderstanding that would change the course of galactic history. War Marshal Vextara stood in the command center of his flagship and studied the response from the humans. The message had taken his translation computer several hours to decode, and even now parts of it remained unclear. The humans were asking for 30 days to prepare their children for evacuation. The word translated roughly to small warriors or elite forces in the Drakmor language, which puzzled him greatly. Commander Zektar, what do our intelligence reports say about human military structure? Vexthara asked his second-in-command. Very little, War Marshal. This species only achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Our scouts report they have basic military technology and small colonial outposts. Nothing that should require 200 ships to conquer. Vexthara frowned. In his 1,000 years of service to the Drakmor Imperium, he had conquered 847 worlds. Every species followed the same pattern. They would see the massive Drakmor fleet, realize they were outmatched, and surrender within hours. The humans were different. They were not surrendering, and they were talking about moving their elite forces to safety. Perhaps we underestimated them, Vexthara mused. Grant their request. 30 days will give us time to study these children they speak of. On Earth, the response came back quickly. The aliens had agreed to wait 30 days, which surprised everyone in Earth's command center. Dr. Lisa Parker had expected either immediate attack or rejection of their request. The fact that the Drakmor had agreed suggested they might be more reasonable than their initial demands indicated. This gives us time to prepare, General Davis said to his staff. I want every available ship recalled to Earth. Start moving civilian populations to the deep colonies, and begin preparations for planetary defense. What about the children? Asked Commander Alex Turner. Should we start the evacuation immediately? Yes. Priority goes to anyone under 18. We'll move them to the safest colonies first. As Earth's military began their preparations, daily life continued across the planet. In a small town in Texas, 12-year-old Billy Santos sat in his garage, taking apart an old plasma rifle his grandfather had given him. The weapon was a relic from Earth's last major war, but Billy found the technology fascinating. His small hands moved with surprising skill as he removed each component and laid it out on his workbench. Billy, what are you doing with that thing? His mother called from the house. Just seeing how it works, Mom, Billy replied, not looking up from his task. I think I can make it work better. Within 3 minutes, Billy had completely disassembled the rifle. Within another 3 minutes, he had put it back together with several modifications that improved its power output by 15%. To Billy, it was just a fun puzzle. He did not know that Drakmor surveillance satellites were watching and recording everything he did on the Drakmor flagship. Intelligence Officer Krivak reviewed the surveillance footage with growing alarm. War Marshal, you need to see this, he said. Sending the video to the main display, Vextara watched the recording of Billy Santos and felt a chill run down his spine. The small human had disassembled and modified a military weapon with the casual ease of a master technician. The modifications were clearly improvements, suggesting advanced understanding of weapons technology. How old is this warrior? Vextara asked. According to our estimates, this is one of their children, The life form appears to be in early development stage. A child did this, yes, War Marshal, and this is not an isolated case. More footage appeared on the screen. In Maine, 14-year-old Kevin Walsh was working on a small spacecraft engine in his school's workshop. Kevin had always been good with machines, and when his teacher asked the class to improve the efficiency of a standard propulsion unit, Kevin had approached the problem with enthusiasm. His modifications increased the engine's power output by 300% while reducing fuel consumption by half. "This is impossible," Vextara whispered. "No species develops such advanced technical skills at such a young age." "There's more, War Marshal." The surveillance footage shifted to a location in California where 16-year-old Emma Johnson was leading a group of teenagers through complex tactical exercises. What the Drakmore observers saw as military training was actually Emma's after-school strategy club, where students played elaborate war games using computer simulations. Emma had studied historical battles since she was 8 years old and had developed an intuitive understanding of tactical principles that impressed even her teachers. "She's analyzing our ship formations," Commander Zektar observed as he watched Emma point out weaknesses in various fleet arrangements during her presentation to the other students. "How can she know our formations? We haven't engaged in battle. Yet, perhaps their intelligence network is more advanced than we thought." In New York, 11-year-old Danny Rodriguez sat in his bedroom with 3 computer screens surrounding him. Danny loved puzzles and challenges, and when he discovered that aliens had arrived at Earth, he decided to try to learn more about them. Using techniques he had learned from online tutorials, Danny began probing the communications networks around Earth's solar system. Within hours, he had found and infiltrated several Drakmore surveillance systems. "Cool alien computers," Danny said to himself as he explored the Drakmore networks. "Their security is pretty basic, though." Danny began downloading files and translating alien text just for fun. He had no idea that his casual hacking had triggered alerts throughout the Drakmore fleet and was being interpreted as a sophisticated intelligence operation. "War Marshal, we have a security breach," Krivik reported urgently. "One of their children has penetrated our surveillance network." "What? How is that possible?" "Unknown, War Marshal. The intrusion methods are unlike anything in our database. The individual appears to be very young, but their technical skills exceed our best computer specialists." Vextara stared at the reports flooding in from across Earth. Everywhere his surveillance teams looked, they found more evidence of these mysterious human children demonstrating impossible abilities. Young humans were solving complex engineering problems, developing new technologies, analyzing military tactics, and penetrating Drakmore security systems with casual ease. "Commander Zektar, I want a full review of our intelligence on human military capabilities," Vextara ordered. "It appears we have severely underestimated this species." "Yes, War Marshal. But our preliminary scans showed they were a primitive civilization." "Then our scans were wrong. No primitive civilization could produce warriors like these at such a young age. The humans must have some kind of advanced genetic enhancement program or secret training system that creates these elite fighters." Dr. Lisa Parker continued her work on improving communications with the Drakmore, unaware that her simple request to evacuate children had been interpreted as a threat to deploy Earth's most dangerous military assets. As she refined the translation protocols, she noticed that certain concepts seemed to translate poorly between human and Drakmore languages, but she had no idea how badly the word children had been misunderstood. The 30-day countdown had begun, and both sides were preparing for what they thought would come next. Earth's military worked frantically to mount a defense against a superior alien force, while the Drakmore fleet prepared to face what they believed was the most dangerous enemy they had ever encountered. At the center of this growing misunderstanding were Earth's children, who continued their normal lives completely unaware that an entire alien empire had begun to fear them. The Drakmore High Command gathered in the War Council chamber aboard Vextara-S flagship. The massive circular room had seen the planning of countless conquests, but never had the assembled war leaders looked so troubled. Admiral Torquan, commander of the Eastern Fleet, reviewed the intelligence reports with disbelief written across his scarred features. "These cannot be accurate," Torquan declared, throwing the datapad onto the table. "No species in the galaxy produces warriors of this caliber at such a young age." "The evidence is undeniable," Intelligence Chief Krevek replied. "Our surveillance has documented dozens of cases. These human children demonstrate capabilities that exceed our own elite forces." War Marshal Vexthara activated the main display, showing footage from the past week of observations. In Texas, 13-year-old Tony Kim had built a functioning shield generator in his garage using spare parts from old electronics. The device could deflect energy weapons and had an efficiency rating that surpassed current Drakmor military standards. Tony had built it for his school science fair, thinking it would be cool to create something from his favorite science fiction movies. This young warrior created military-grade defensive technology using primitive components, Krevak explained. "Our engineers estimate it would take our best scientists months to reverse engineer his design." The display shifted to Massachusetts, where 17-year-old Rachel Green worked on complex mathematical equations in her advanced calculus class. Rachel loved puzzles and patterns, and she had been analyzing news reports about the alien fleet positions. Using orbital mechanics and probability theory, she had created models that predicted with 94% accuracy how the alien ships would move in different tactical situations. "She has solved our fleet movement algorithms," Admiral Torquan observed with growing alarm. "Algorithms that took our strategists decades to develop. How is this possible?" demanded General Crickster, the Drakmor's most experienced ground commander. "Are we certain these are not adult warriors in disguise?" "Biological scans confirm their age," Krevik replied. "These are genuinely young humans, all under 18 standard years." The footage continued with 10-year-old Matt Brown from Ohio, who had built a communication device in his bedroom that could penetrate Drakmor jamming technology. Matt had been frustrated that his friends could not reach him during planned communication blackouts, so he had modified his radio equipment using techniques he found in electronics magazines. His innocent solution had inadvertently created a breakthrough in quantum communication that the Drakmor had been trying to achieve for centuries. "This is beyond comprehension," War Marshal Vexthara said quietly. "In 1,000 years of conquest, we have never encountered anything like this." On Earth, Admiral Sarah Williams stood in the command center of Earth's naval headquarters, reviewing the defensive preparations. Ships were returning from the colonies daily, and evacuation efforts were proceeding smoothly. What puzzled her was the Drakmor behavior. Despite having overwhelming force advantage, the aliens had not moved closer to Earth or made any aggressive actions beyond their initial demands. "Admiral, we have an interesting report from our intelligence division," Commander Alex Turner said as he approached her station. "What kind of report?" "Our codebreakers have been analyzing Drakmor communications traffic. The aliens seem to be discussing something they call elite human warriors extensively. Elite warriors, they must mean our military forces." "That's what we thought initially, but the context suggests they're referring to our civilian population. Specifically, our children," Admiral Williams frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "Why would they be concerned about children?" "We're not sure. But they seem to be treating our evacuation efforts as some kind of military deployment. Every time we move children to the colonies, their communication traffic increases significantly." Meanwhile, in suburban Denver, 14-year-old Nancy Davis worked on her computer in her bedroom. Nancy was General Davis's daughter, and she had inherited her father's strategic mind. She had been following news reports about the alien situation and had begun creating her own analysis of potential outcomes. Using public information about ship capabilities and fleet positions, Nancy developed several tactical scenarios that could help Earth's defense forces. What Nancy did not know was that Drakmor intelligence had identified her as the daughter of Earth's top general. When they intercepted communications between father and daughter discussing bringing Nancy to the front lines if necessary, they interpreted it as plans to deploy a high-value strategic asset. General Davis had simply been considering moving his daughter to a safer location, but the translation algorithms turned his paternal concern into what sounded like a military deployment order. War Marshal, we have intercepted critical intelligence, Krivak reported urgently. The human command structure is preparing to deploy the offspring of their primary military leader. The general's own child? Yes, communications suggest this. Individual possesses exceptional strategic capabilities. They refer to bringing her to the front lines when necessary. Vexthara felt his confidence wavering. Every report made the humans seem more dangerous than the last. A civilization that would deploy the children of their own commanders must have incredible confidence in their military capabilities. Back on Earth, 15-year-old Grace Taylor sat in her high school's computer lab working on a programming assignment. Grace enjoyed creating defensive protocols for computer networks, treating it like an elaborate puzzle game. Her latest project involved designing security systems that could adapt and evolve to counter new types of attacks. The system she created was so advanced that it caught the attention of her computer science teacher, who forwarded it to a friend. In Earth Cyber Defense Division, unknown to Grace, her innocent school project had created a defensive network protocol that was more sophisticated than anything Earth's military currently used. When Drakmor intelligence intercepted references to new defensive protocols designed by human youth, they assumed it was part of a coordinated military development program. These human children appear to be their primary research and development force, Admiral Tarquin concluded after reviewing the latest reports. They're creating new weapons, defensive systems, communication technologies, and tactical algorithms at an unprecedented rate. But why use children for such tasks? General Crickster asked. Perhaps their neural development allows for capabilities that diminish with age, Intelligence Chief Krivak suggested. Or perhaps they have genetic modifications that only manifest in the young. Either way, we are facing something entirely outside our experience, War Marshal Vexthara declared. These are not the primitive humans our initial scans suggested. They possess some form of advanced warrior development program that produces elite fighters at an incredibly young age. The War Council fell silent as they contemplated the implications. For the first time in their military careers, the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful army were genuinely afraid. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but instead found themselves facing what appeared to be the most sophisticated military development program in galactic history. What are your orders, War Marshal? Admiral Tarquin asked. Double our surveillance efforts. I want detailed analysis of every human child we can observe. We need to understand the full extent of their capabilities before we proceed. And if they deploy these elite forces against us? Vexthara looked around the War Council chamber at his most experienced commanders. These were veterans who had conquered hundreds of worlds without fear. Now they sat in worried silence, contemplating an enemy they did not understand. Then we will face the greatest military challenge in Drakmor history, he replied grimly. War Marshal Vexthara decided that waiting and watching was no longer enough. The intelligence reports about human children had become so alarming that he needed to test Earth's defenses directly. He chose Luna Colony 7, a small mining outpost, on Earth's moon for what he considered a minor probing attack. The colony had a population of roughly 3,000 humans and appeared to be defended by standard military forces rather than the mysterious child warriors this will give us. Our first real combat data on human capabilities, Vexthara explained to his commanders. We'll use minimal force and observe their response patterns. What if they deploy their elite children to defend the colony? Admiral Tarquin asked. Then we'll finally see these legendary warriors in action and can adjust our strategies accordingly. The Drakmor strike force consisted of 12 ships, more than enough to overwhelm a small mining colony, but small enough to avoid triggering a full-scale war. As they approached Luna Colony 7, the Drakmor commanders expected to encounter the advanced defensive systems and tactical brilliance they had observed in their surveillance of Earth's children. Instead, they found Peter Jackson, a 45-year-old maintenance chief who had been fixing air recycling systems when the attack began. Peter was a practical man who had worked in space colonies for most of his adult life. When the emergency alarm sounded, he grabbed his service weapon and joined the other defenders without hesitation. "All colonists to emergency stations," announced Mary Collins, the 38-year-old colony administrator over the communication system. "This is not a drill." Mary had been reviewing supply schedules when the Drakmor ships appeared on the colony's sensors. She activated the emergency protocols that every colony administrator was trained to handle, coordinating the evacuation of non-essential personnel to the secure sections of the colony. Bob Wilson led the security team that formed Luna Colony 7's primary defense. Bob was a veteran of Earth security forces, competent and well-trained, but he commanded only 30 security officers against an alien force of unknown size and capability. The colony's defensive systems were standard installations designed to handle pirates or equipment failures, not military assault by an advanced alien civilization. "Contact Earth Defense Command," Bob ordered his communications officer. "Tell them we're under attack and request immediate assistance." The battle that followed was exactly what the Drakmor expected from their previous conquests. The human defenders fought bravely but predictably. Their weapons and tactics were competent but unremarkable. Within 4 hours, the Drakmor forces had overwhelmed the colony's defenses and secured the installation with minimal casualties on either side. "This is confusing, War Marshal," reported Commander Veltrick, who had led the assault. "These humans fought like any other species we've conquered. There were no advanced weapons, no revolutionary tactics, and certainly no sign of the elite child warriors our intelligence reports described." Perhaps this colony was not defended by their children," Vexthara replied. "Continue the occupation and gather intelligence on their defensive capabilities." On Earth, news of the Luna colony attack sent shockwaves through the government and military leadership. General Davis convened an emergency meeting of his senior staff to analyze what the assault meant for Earth's defense preparations. "They're testing us," Admiral Sarah Williams concluded after reviewing the battle reports. "This was a probing attack to assess our capabilities." "Why didn't they encounter more resistance?" asked Commander Alex Turner. "Luna Colony 7 had standard defenses." "That's exactly the point," General Davis replied. "They wanted to see how we fight before committing to a larger assault." What the Earth leadership did not understand was that the Drakmor were just as confused by the attack as they were. The aliens had expected to face the legendary child warriors but instead found ordinary human defenders. This led them to conclude that Earth was holding back their elite forces for the main battle. In her bedroom in California, 16-year-old Lucy Adams watched the news coverage of the Luna colony attack with intense interest. Lucy had always been fascinated by military history and strategy, and she began analyzing the footage of the Drakmor assault with the same attention she gave to her favorite historical documentaries. "Their approach pattern is inefficient," Lucy said to herself as she traced the alien ship movements on her tablet. "They're using overwhelming force instead of precise tactics." Lucy spent the next several hours creating a detailed analysis of the Drakmor assault, identifying 7 major tactical weaknesses in their approach. She noted that their ships clustered too closely together, making them vulnerable to area effect. Weapons. Their communication protocols appeared to rely on a centralized command structure that could be disrupted. Most importantly, they seemed to expect their enemies to fight using conventional defensive strategies. "If I were defending against this, I would use mobile units to exploit these gaps in their formation," Lucy concluded, marking weak points on her tactical display. Meanwhile, in Michigan, 12-year-old Ryan Phillips had a different reaction to the news. Ryan loved engineering puzzles and began thinking about how Earth's defensive systems could be improved based on what they had learned from the attack. "The colony's shields failed too quickly," Ryan observed while working on his computer. "If you modified the power distribution system and added redundant generators, you could maintain defensive coverage much longer." Ryan began sketching out improvements to standard colony defense grids, incorporating ideas from science fiction stories and engineering principles he had learned from online tutorials. His modifications would increase defensive capability by several 100% while using the same basic technology. In Colorado, 14-year-old Helen Carter took yet another approach to analyzing the alien attack. Helen was interested in technology and began studying the sensor readings from the Drakmor ships that had been made public. She wanted to understand how their weapons and shields worked so she could think of ways to counter them. Their energy signatures suggest they're using plasma-based weapons with quantum field generators, Helen noted as she worked through the technical data. But the field harmonics create interference patterns that could be exploited. Helen's analysis identified specific frequencies that could disrupt Drakmor shield systems and weapon targeting arrays. Her insights came from combining scientific principles she had learned in school with creative, problem-solving approaches that came naturally to her young mind. None of these teenagers realized that their innocent, intellectual exercises were being monitored by Drakmor surveillance systems. The aliens intercepted fragments of their analyses through various communication channels and interpreted them as evidence of a coordinated military intelligence operation. War Marshal, we're receiving concerning intelligence from Earth, reported Krivak during the daily briefing. Their children appear to be conducting detailed analysis of our assault on Luna Colony 7. What kind of analysis? Tactical evaluation, defensive improvements, and technical countermeasures. The level of sophistication suggests they're preparing comprehensive responses to our capabilities. Show me. The display activated showing intercepted communications. That referenced tactical weaknesses, defensive modifications, and countermeasure development. The Drakmor translation systems could not capture the full context of teenage curiosity and academic interest, so they interpreted the activities as military planning sessions. They're treating our attack as a learning experience, Admiral Turquan observed with growing unease. These child warriors are analyzing our methods to develop more effective responses. This confirms our intelligence about their capabilities, General Crickster added. No ordinary species could produce strategic analysts of this quality at such a young age. War Marshal Vextara studied the reports with increasing alarm. The attack on Luna Colony 7 had been intended to provide information about human capabilities, but instead it had revealed that Earth's children were even more dangerous than previously thought. They were not just individual prodigies but appeared to be part of a coordinated intelligence network that could rapidly analyze and counter Drakmor military techniques. "What are your orders, War Marshal?" asked Admiral Tarquin. "Increase our fleet strength. Request reinforcements from the home systems. If these human child warriors are as capable as our intelligence suggests, we'll need overwhelming force to defeat them. How many additional ships? All of them. I'm declaring this a maximum threat scenario." The decision sent shockwaves through the Drakmor command structure. Never before had a war marshal requested the entire Imperial fleet for a single conquest. But as Vextar reviewed the intelligence reports about Earth's children, he became convinced that humanity represented the greatest military threat the Drakmor Empire had ever faced. The emergency session of the Drakmor High Council took place on the capital world of Drakmor Prime, thousands of light years from Earth. Supreme Commander Zarthok, ruler of the Drakmor Empire, reviewed the reports from War Marshal Vextara with growing disbelief. In 3,000 years of imperial expansion, no single world had ever required the attention of the entire Drakmor fleet. "You're requesting 5,000 ships for one primitive planet?" Supreme Commander Zarthok asked, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "Yes, Supreme Commander. The humans represent an unprecedented threat to imperial security," Vexthar replied through the long-range communication link. "Their child warrior program could destabilize our entire military doctrine." Explain. War Marshal Vexthara activated the intelligence files, transmitting thousands of surveillance reports to the High Council. The assembled military leaders watched footage of human children, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded their own elite forces. They saw teenagers solving tactical problems that had challenged Drakmor strategists for decades. They witnessed children creating technology that surpassed current Imperial standards. These are not isolated cases, Vexthara explained. Our surveillance indicates that this species has developed some form of genetic enhancement or training program that produces elite warriors at an incredibly young age. If this technology were to spread to other species, it could end Drakmor dominance in the galaxy. Supreme Commander Zarthok studied the reports with the calculating mind that had expanded the Drakmor Empire across two-thirds of the known galaxy. What he saw challenged everything he understood about military development and species capability. How many of these child warriors do they possess? Conservative estimates suggest millions, Supreme Commander. Every young human we've observed demonstrates some level of advanced capability. The High Council chamber fell silent. Million of elite warriors would represent the largest military force in galactic history, and if they were as capable as the reports suggested, they could threaten not just the Drakmor Empire but every established power in the galaxy. This cannot be allowed to continue, declared Admiral Supreme Kolvex, the Empire's highest military authority. If these humans can create warriors of this caliber, they must be stopped before they can share this technology with other species. What are your recommendations, War Marshal? Supreme Commander Zarthok asked. Total planetary elimination, Supreme Commander. We cannot risk allowing this species to survive and spread their warrior development program to other worlds. The decision to deploy the entire Imperial fleet was made within hours. 5,000 Drakmor warships began converging on Earth from across the galaxy, representing the largest military mobilization in Imperial history. The official declaration classified humanity as a Category Alpha threat to galactic stability, a designation previously reserved for cosmic-level disasters like supernova explosions or galaxy-spanning plagues on Earth. President Paul Anderson convened an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. The intelligence reports coming from space monitoring stations painted a terrifying picture of the approaching Drakmor reinforcements. How many ships are we talking about? President Anderson asked Admiral Sarah Williams. Our best estimates suggest 5,000 warships, Mr. President. It's the largest fleet ever assembled in recorded galactic history. 5,000? The President felt the blood drain from his face. Why would they need 5,000 ships to conquer one planet? We don't know, sir. Our intelligence suggests they view us as some kind of existential threat. General Davis joined the conversation from Earth Defense Command. Mr. President, we need to consider all options. Against those numbers, conventional defense is impossible. What about evacuation? We're accelerating the evacuation of children to the deep colonies, but we can't move everyone in time. We have 4 billion people on Earth and maybe 2 weeks before the main fleet arrives. In her bedroom in Illinois, 15-year-old Sam White worked on her latest engineering project. Sam had always been interested in space technology, and the alien crisis had inspired her to design improvements to Earth's defensive capabilities. Using blueprints she found in her father's engineering files and principles she had learned from online courses, Sam created plans for a defensive satellite network that could provide planetary protection. If you position the satellites in a geodesic pattern around the planet and link their targeting systems, you could create overlapping fields of fire that would be really hard to break through. Sam explained to her computer as she worked out the mathematical relationships. Sam's design incorporated advanced concepts like adaptive targeting algorithms, distributed power systems, and modular construction techniques. Her satellite network could be built using existing Earth technology but would provide defensive coverage far superior to anything currently protecting the planet. Across the country in Oregon, 13-year-old Katie Moore approached the alien crisis from a completely different angle. Katie loved languages and had been fascinated by the challenge of communicating with aliens. She had been working on improving the translation software that Dr. Lisa Parker's team was using, treating it like an elaborate puzzle game. The problem is that their language structure is completely different from any human language, Katie said to herself as she analyzed Drakmor communication patterns. But if you approach it like a mathematical system instead of a linguistic one, you can find the underlying logic. Katie's breakthrough came when she realized that Drakmor language was based on mathematical relationships rather than grammatical structures. By treating their communications as equations rather than sentences, she developed translation algorithms that were far more accurate than anything Earth's experts had created. Meanwhile, in New York, 11-year-old Eric Johnson was working on a different kind of problem. Eric loved video games, especially strategy games that involved tactical combat. When he heard about the approaching alien fleet, he began designing targeting systems that could help Earth's defenses fight against overwhelming odds. The trick is to not try to fight all of them at once, Eric reasoned as he worked on his computer. You need smart targeting that can identify the most important ships and hit them first. Eric's targeting system used pattern recognition algorithms inspired by his favorite games. The system could analyze enemy fleet formations, identify command ships and critical support vessels, and prioritize targets to maximize damage to enemy capabilities. His design was more sophisticated than Earth's current military targeting systems. All three teenagers worked on their projects as intellectual exercises, unaware that their innovations could actually help defend their planet. They also didn't know that Drakmor surveillance was monitoring their activities and interpreting their work as evidence of coordinated military preparation. War Marshal, the situation is deteriorating rapidly, Intelligence Chief Krivak reported. Earth's children are accelerating their military development programs. We're detecting advanced satellite defense designs, breakthrough communication systems, and sophisticated targeting protocols. They know we're coming in force, War Marshal Vexthora concluded. They're preparing their ultimate defenses. What if we're wrong about their capabilities? Asked Admiral Tarquin. What if these children are not as dangerous as we believe? Can we afford to take that risk? Vexthara replied. If we're right, and these human child warriors are as capable as our intelligence suggests, they represent a threat to every species in the galaxy. If we're wrong, we will have used excessive force against a primitive civilization. I prefer the latter outcome. The final Drakmor ultimatum was broadcast to Earth just as the first reinforcement fleets arrived at the edge of the solar system. The message was clear and uncompromising. Surrender the child weapon technology immediately or face complete planetary destruction. Dr. Lisa Parker received the ultimatum in Earth's communication center and felt her blood turn cold as she read the translation. The aliens were demanding that Earth surrender technology that didn't exist. They wanted humanity to hand over the secret of creating child warriors, apparently not understanding that Earth's children were simply normal human beings. General Davis, I think we have a serious problem, Lisa said as she forwarded the message to military command. The aliens believe we have some kind of advanced military technology related to our children. What kind of technology? I'm not sure they even know. But they're demanding we surrender it or they'll destroy the planet. General Davis read the ultimatum and felt the weight of humanity's fate settling on his shoulders. Earth was about to be destroyed because of a misunderstanding that no one knew how to resolve. Katie Moore sat in her bedroom staring at her computer screen with excitement. After days of working on the translation problem, she had finally achieved a breakthrough that would allow perfect communication between humans and Drakmor, her new algorithm could handle the mathematical structure of Drakmor language and translate concepts with complete accuracy. Dr. Parker, this is Katie Moore, she said into her phone after calling Earth Defense Command. I think I've solved the translation problem. Dr. Lisa Parker was exhausted from days of failed communication attempts, but something in the 13-year-old's voice made her pay attention. What do you mean, Katie? I figured out how their language really works. It's not like human language at all. If you want, I can show you how to talk to them properly. Within an hour, Katie was in the communication center explaining her discovery to a room full of Earth's top scientists and military leaders. Her solution was elegant and brilliant, turning the impossible task of alien communication into a manageable technical problem. Their entire language is based on mathematical relationships, Katie explained, her young voice filled with enthusiasm. When they say children, they're not talking about young humans. In their language, it translates to something like small. Elite warriors or compact battle units. Dr. Parker felt her heart stop as the implications became clear. You mean they think our children are some kind of military force? Exactly. And when we asked for time to evacuate our children, they thought we were asking for time to deploy our most dangerous warriors. General Davis stepped forward, his face pale with understanding. That's why they brought 5,000 ships. They think we have millions of elite soldiers. But why would they think human children are warriors? Asked Admiral Williams. Katie pulled up her analysis of intercepted Drakmor communications. They've been watching our kids and misinterpreting everything they do. When Billy Santos fixed that old rifle, they thought he was a weapons specialist. When Emma Johnson played strategy games, they thought she was a military tactical expert. The room fell silent as everyone realized the magnitude of the misunderstanding. Earth was about to be destroyed because aliens had mistaken human curiosity and creativity for military prowess. Can we explain this to them? President Anderson asked. I think so, Katie replied. But we need to be really careful about how we do it. They're terrified of us right now. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been listening from his ship in orbit, spoke up over the communication link. Katie, can you help us contact their leader directly? Yes, I can set up a perfect translation link. But someone needs to be really good at explaining things. Dr. Lisa Parker took a deep breath and activated the communication system using Katie's new translation. Protocols. For the first time since the crisis began, she could speak directly to War Marshal Vexthara with complete understanding on both sides. War Marshal Vexthara, this is Dr. Lisa Parker of Earth. I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding between our species. On the Drakmor flagship, War Marshal Vexthara received the message with perfect clarity. The translation was so accurate that he could understand not just the words but the emotional context behind them. Human, you have 30 seconds to surrender your child weapon technology before we begin planetary bombardment. War Marshal, we don't have any child weapon technology. Our children are not warriors. They are simply young humans who haven't finished growing yet. The statement confused Vexthara completely. Young humans? What does this mean? Dr. Parker realized she needed to explain human biology and development to a species that apparently grew up very differently. War Marshal, human children are not elite warriors. They are humans who are still learning and developing. Their brains are designed to be curious and creative, which makes them good at solving problems, but they are not military forces. This cannot be correct. Our surveillance shows these young humans demonstrating capabilities that exceed our finest warriors. Because learning and creativity are natural for young humans, Billy Santos took apart that rifle because he was curious about how it worked, not because he was trained as a weapons expert. Emma Johnson analyzed military tactics because she enjoys strategy games as entertainment, not because she's a professional soldier. War Marshal Vexthara felt his understanding of the universe shifting. You mean these individuals were not trained for military purposes? No, War Marshal, they were just being children. To demonstrate the point, Dr. Parker arranged for several of Earth's children to speak directly with the Drakmor leadership. Amy Chen, now present in the communication center, explained her engineering work with the enthusiasm of someone sharing her favorite hobby. I just like figuring out how things work and making them work better, Amy said. It's fun to solve puzzles and build new stuff. Billy Santos joined the conversation from Texas, still unaware that an entire alien empire had been terrified of his mechanical skills. I take things apart because I want to understand them. My grandpa taught me that if you understand how something works, you can usually make it work better. Emma Johnson called in from California, confused about why aliens were interested in her strategy club. We just play games and study history. I like learning about how battles were fought because the tactics are really interesting. As more children joined the conversation, War Marshal Vexthara began to understand the truth. These were not elite warriors or the products of an advanced military program. They were simply young humans expressing natural curiosity and creativity. But their capabilities are extraordinary, Vexthara protested. They solve problems and create innovations at levels that exceed our best specialists. Because that's what human children do, Dr. Parker explained gently. They learn quickly, ask questions about everything, and approach problems without preconceived limitations. It's not military training, it's just how humans grow up. The revelation hit the Drakmor leadership like a physical blow. For weeks, they had been preparing to fight what they believed was the most dangerous military force in galactic history. Instead, they had been terrified of children playing, learning, and exploring their natural curiosity. War Marshal, Admiral Turquan said quietly on the Drakmor command channel. If their children can do this simply through natural development, what does that say about human potential? It means we've been approaching this entirely wrong, Vexara replied, his voice filled with wonder rather than fear. Intelligence Chief Krivak reviewed the new understanding of human society. War Marshal, if this is how humans naturally develop, then their entire species is built around innovation and adaptation. Yes, Vexthara said slowly. And instead of trying to destroy them, perhaps we should be learning from them. The war council that followed was unlike any in Drakmor history. Instead of planning conquest, they discussed the implications of a species that encouraged creativity and curiosity in their young. The Drakmor Empire had been built on rigid military discipline and unquestioning obedience, values that had made them powerful but had also limited their ability to innovate and adapt. General Davis, speaking for Earth, proposed a radical alternative to invasion. War Marshal, instead of conquest, what if we shared knowledge? Earth's children could learn from your advanced technology, and perhaps your people could learn from our approaches to education and development. You would welcome us as allies, rather than conquerors? We would welcome the chance to learn from each other. The first cultural exchange began within days. Drakmor observers visited Earth schools and watched human children learn through play, experimentation, and creative problem-solving. Human educators traveled to Drakmor ships to understand how their society functioned and share different approaches to development and learning. 9-year-old Tim Garcia became one of the first humans to befriend a Drakmor when young. Observer Kexelin was assigned to study human child development. Tim treated the alien visitor like any new friend, showing him Earth games and asking endless questions about Drakmor technology and culture. Do you want to see how I built my robot? Tim asked, completely unaware that he was helping to bridge the gap between two civilizations. Teacher Lavra Martinez worked with Drakmor educators to establish the first joint human Drakmor learning center, where children from both species could learn together and share different ways of understanding the universe. The crisis that had nearly ended in the destruction of Earth instead became the beginning of a new era of galactic cooperation. The galaxy's strongest army had indeed feared Earth's children, but not because they were weapons of war. They had feared them because they represented something the Drakmor Empire had forgotten: the power of curiosity, creativity, and the courage to imagine a better future. War Marshal Vexthara, now serving as the first Drakmor ambassador to Earth, often reflected on how close they had come to destroying the very thing that could save both their civilizations. In his final report to the High Council, he wrote that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactics, but their willingness to let their children dream.